Here we go. So, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Greg.
Morning. I think what we'll do is we'll just give it a few minutes, let a few people come in. I mean, we're not due to start till 10 o'clock. And then once we're ready to up and go and up and roll, I will upload the presentation and we can get cracking. Thanks very much for everybody agreeing to attend. Oh, Simon, you've got a question?
I've got a question already. Wow.
Oh no, really?
Sorry, wrong button. I was just waving, I thought.
Simon, hi. I'm Paul. Nice to meet you. I'll wave back at you, okay? So hi.
Hello.
It's good to see we're interactive straight away. We like that.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, I hope everybody's having a lot more sunnier weather than we're having up north here, actually, to be fair.
The sun is shining here in Devon.
Oh, I love that. Oh, well, shines on the righteous. We are.
It won't last.
I'm very much up north, and I got soaked on the school run this morning. I suspect it will continue.
Sorry, I'm just eating my breakfast.
Oh, don't you worry. That's perfectly fine by me.
I'll mute myself so you can't hear me.
Oh,
morning.
Simon's tipping down in here. Good morning.
Morning.
We'll just give it a few more minutes, get some more people in attendance. I think we're expecting over 100, so there might be a few more that join us yet. And the numbers are ticking up nicely, so we'll just give it a few minutes just to ensure everybody can get in, and then we'll get started.
I didn't realise you were so popular. This is an amazing. Look at this. The numbers are just going up all the time. It's absolutely fantastic.
I suspect, Paul, it's probably more you than me. Everybody's anticipating the experts. I think that's what it is, or all curious about your array of guitars behind you, possibly.
Yeah, I'm missing one because I took one out last night, so I should have just noticed that. But good point.
It's like watching a ticker tape go up every time a number comes in.
Well, it's 76. It's a good number.
Yeah.
It's not even due to start yet, so it's.
No, I don't want to keep people hanging on. It's very much appreciated people's time and effort on a Thursday morning.
Oh, it is due to start. It's due to start at 10.
I know, and we will, I promise, get going. I know you're anticipating it wonderfully, but we will. I'll just give it a few more minutes to get a few people in case anybody's grabbing that last minute caffeine hit or toast. You never know.
So, Yvonne, what part of the world are you in then, if we're interactive like this? Sorry to ask you a direct question so early.
That's okay. I'm in Ironbridge in Shropshire.
Okay, near Telford then, is that right?
Yeah, near Telford, yeah.
Okay, cool.
We don't admit to that.
Ironbridge sounds much nicer. Apologies for anybody who lives in Telford, by the way.
Just about to say, you might have alienated part of the audience there, Paul.
Well, there's nothing new there, Craig.
No, that is certainly the case. I've known you long enough for that.
So whereabouts are you, Paul?
I'm just outside Newbury in Berkshire. So
okay.
yeah, and Craig's up in I can't remember where you are now. You're in St Anne's now.
Lytham St Anne's,
just
outside of Lytham St Anne's, which is a lovely spot of the world when it's not raining.
One of
my
my
bit of a musician there, Paul.
Pardon?
Bit of a musician there.
Yes, I'd like to. I'm quite a good musician in my own mind. Whether anybody else thinks I am is another matter. But yeah, it sort of just makes a difference between artificial backgrounds to have real things. So
yeah. You don't want my background. I've got postcards from all the family stuck behind me. So without it, it's too chaotic.
Well, I'm sure they're lovely postcards from all over the world. So
They are indeed, all the way from Antarctica to the North Pole.
My word.
Wow, we have a global postcard collector. There's a name for it. I'll think of it in a minute.
Ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably a better one.
Right. I think the numbers seem to have ceased climbing now, so I will start to share my screen and we'll get underway so not to waste too much of people's
Would you
valuable
like
time.
to mute me?
Oh, go on then. Where are you? I've got to find you first. Oof, where are you? See more. In fact, why don't I just do mute all? That might be easier, mightn't it?
Yeah.
Mute all. Although that might mute Paul. I hope that doesn't. Paul, are you still
No,
speaking?
Craig, I'm okay. I think I'm
all
in
right.
presenter mode, so all good.
Perfect. So I'll put the screens up that we're going to be dealing with today. Can everyone see my slides? Can you see them, Paul?
I can.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah,
that's
you're
wonderful. Good. Wonderful. Right, so we'll get going. So firstly, welcome and thanks for joining today's presentation. It's very much appreciate your time. I know how busy people are. The title of today's presentation is Children's Critical Illness Cover and Income Protection, the Perfect Match. Now, today's webinar will be slightly different than the norm. We'll have a couple of slides on the need, and we'll have a little bit about British Friendly's product nearer to the end. But the bulk of today will be a Q&A with Paul Roberts. Now, for those who don't know Paul is self-professed expert, and rightly so, of critical illness from CIExpert. And I've known and worked with Paul for 20 years or so now, is it, Paul?
Oh,
I think.
Craig, I think it's longer than that.
It might even be longer than
Yeah.
that, to be fair, although you can't tell from my youthful good looks. But his knowledge and passion for CI as a whole, but particularly children's critical illness, is pretty much unrivaled, and I've seen that over the years. So it'd be interesting to get his view. So Paul, thank you for your time and welcome.
Thank you, Craig. It's great to be here, and it's great to see so many people on the call. And Craig's been very generous in his introduction there, so I'll do my best to share my experiences and my thoughts with you all on the call, so we can all take something from it today. So thank you, Craig.
No worries. Oops, hopefully I can get my slides working, to be fair. Why is it not working? There we go. Here we go. So, just on a brief introduction there to Paul. So what we're going to cover off today is obviously got myself, who I am the Craig Dickinson, the Head of Sales and National Partnerships at British Friendly. We offer a range of income protection solutions, but we also have additional benefits such as fracture cover and children's critical illness, which is what we're going to be discussing today. Paul, as I said rightly in my interview, he's a bit of an expert when it comes to critical illness, and he's been at CIExpert now for quite a number of years now, Paul, I believe.
It's just over 5 years now, Craig, but I originally joined the Guardian Royal Exchange in Cardiff in 1986. Just about the same time that critical illness was first introduced into the UK anyway. So I've been doing protection, and critical illness has always been part of my career, and I've been doing that for the best part of 39 years. So yeah, looking forward to share some of those experiences with you today.
Wonderful, thanks, Paul. So it's great to have somebody like Paul on the call, who, like I say, is his expertise and knowledge of CI as a whole, but also of children's CI is pretty much invaluable. And we as a company and I have used that knowledge over the years. So it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with. So first off, children's critical illness from British Friendly. So what we've did a year or so ago now is we decided to add children's critical illness cover as an add-on to our proposition. So you can add it to any new Protect or Breathing Space income protection policy at a slight additional cost, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It's designed to help provide clients with more than just an income. So protection, income protection should the worst happen. We can cover up to £25,000 to give some relief to people should the worst thing happen if they had to care for a child with serious illness. Now this is an interesting stat here. So there are lots of stats insurers use in the market to try and disturb thought and provoke conversation. But while the numbers are important, it doesn't take away the stress and the cause, the stress a family can get when a family member gets poorly. So some of these stats here, according to a cost of caring report by the Family Fund, 44% of people said they can't meet the day-to-day expenses despite disability benefits that they may receive. 78% said they'd have to try and find money from somewhere. Maybe that's savings, maybe that's asking family members, maybe that's going to charities or whatever it may be. Should they need some form of specialist equipment, should their child become very poorly and they need to do some adapting at home. I know recently, very local to me, quite a poignant story, DIY SOS, if anybody's ever seen that program, came and did a massive rebuild on a house for a family whose child became seriously ill overnight and spent a good number of years in hospital and couldn't come home because the house wasn't fit for purpose. The family couldn't do it themselves, so they had to rely on a TV program to come up and adapt their home. Great for the TV program because they get publicity out of it, but the family had to rely on that to get their child back home from hospital. And now, thankfully, that's all completed and the child is home. Well, that's a stark realization that if something really, really bad happened and your child was stuck in hospital and you couldn't get them home, that you may have to rely on something like a lottery of going to a TV program to get that child of yours back home in the home environment. And 87% of parents and carers that were surveyed said they had no savings at all. So if this happened, if something drastic happened to your child and it was one of the listed critical illnesses that are covered and your child needed care and support, you may not be able to take time off work. You may not be able to get sick pay from being off work. It's not an income protection payout because your child's poorly, but the parents would still need to find some form of financial relief to help them through the difficult times. And in these kinds of times of stress, you shouldn't be worrying about money. The only thing they should be worrying about is caring for the child and looking after them and making sure that they're okay. So like I say, a lot of these stats and numbers are out there. There's hundreds of them. I could have found a bucket load off the internet, and they're all quite scary. And I've got a 9-year-old child myself, and the thoughts of something bad like this happening and not being able to care for them or not being able to take time off work because we're worried about money would be the last thing that you'd want to do. So how can a children's critical illness plan help? Well, it can offer some form of financial stability. It can help with home modifications, so a lump sum, if you need a certain type of modified bed that they need, or they needed a wet room, or they needed something building within the house, a lump sum payout could help. It can help towards medical costs. I mean, traveling to hospitals, if the child was in hospital and back or had to go for medical appointments, having this lump sum of money available to them could help with some of them costs and some of the burdens of costs, which can be quite high. I don't know the last time anybody went to a hospital. Have you ever tried parking and how much it costs? And it probably varies up and down the country, but it's not cheap. So I think, having that sort of potential lump sum of money sat in the background that could help towards some of this can certainly be helpful. So before we get into the questions, just a quick food for thought poll. I don't need your answers for this one. It's just having a little think about if you were looking at your client bank, what percentage of that client bank who have the need for it, have a children's critical illness policy, I suppose at all, because some are built into CI policies, or as part of an income protection plan as a bolt-on. So have a little think about that as we go into the questions with Paul. And maybe it'll have a little food for thought on some of the conversations that you may have had previously, or you've got coming up, or even in the most recent past of customers who are, in need of this kind of cover but don't have it. So let's get on to the questions now. So this is where we get Paul busy. and he's probably going to cost me a few pints next time I see him live. So we'll go with when did children's critical illness cover come to the market, and how have you seen it evolve over the years?
Craig, thanks. It's a great question, and I'll be Diet Coke from now, or similar type of soft drink. But thank you very much. Well, if we just take a step back to consider the purpose of adult critical illness and why that came about. So in 1983, critical illness was first introduced in South Africa, and it was designed specifically by Marius and Christian Barnard at the time. They could save people's lives, but what they couldn't do is they couldn't help them survive financially after that. So the whole point of a dread disease contract, as it was called at the time, was developed, and that was specifically to provide money to help an individual who'd had, traumatic surgery at that time live and survive after the surgery for as long as they survived themselves. And it was only 3 years later, in 1986, that it was first introduced as an adult plan into the United Kingdom. Canon Lincoln at the time introduced it as an accelerated product on a life-only plan. So essentially, you would have some life cover, and it would be up to £25,000, I think, at the time, and you would draw that down if you had a claim on one of the 5 major conditions: cancer, heart attack, stroke, multiple sclerosis, major organ transplant. And the adult, the life insurance element would reduce accordingly. So that was the start of it. It wasn't until July 1997 that Legal & General introduced the first form of critical illness plan, or for children. It was essentially a £15,000 version of the adult cover. It didn't contain any child-specific conditions. It was just payable if a child, or a qualifying child at the time, got one of the adult conditions. And that stayed at £15,000 until June 2021, when it increased up to 25,000 by LV at the time. And that figure of £25,000 24 years ago is still predominantly the default level of children's critical illness that's available in the market at the moment. Now, there's been some evolutions happen, the first of which happened in 2008, when AIG increased the 25,000 up to 35,000. In 2013, September 2013, Friends Life actually introduced the first 5 children-specific conditions for cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, hydrocephalus, muscular dystrophy, and spina bifida. And they were the first time that children's critical illness actually include anything specific to a child. And over the subsequent 12 years, there's been a dramatic change in the provision of cover for children as part of an adult critical illness or income protection plan, to the extent that within CIExpert at the moment, 83% of all the comparisons we do on a critical illness plan include some form of children's cover, whether that's on a current child or whether that's future children. And in the last 5 years or so, we've seen perhaps the biggest change, and that's where insurers have decoupled children's cover from their adult critical illness plan, or in the same way that British Friendly have done here across both their Protect and their breathing space products. Income protection insurers, British Friendly, are now adding full-blown children's cover to their IP plans, and of course you can get them bolted onto the life-only plans from Zurich and Vitality and Guardian too, but all slightly different ways. And essentially what we're looking at now is a choice for you as part of your conversations with your clients to say, where do I put my children's critical illness if it's needed? Do I add it onto an adult critical illness plan? Do I add it to an income protection plan, or do I add it onto a life-only plan? And these are the considerations that you have available to you now. And it's important that we can reflect on the importance of why you have this choice. And if we have a look at the traditional way of approaching a critical illness plan that includes children's cover, it's almost always built in. You don't have necessarily have much choice, except with 3 insurers, about whether you can include it or not. It's built in whether you need it or not. And in most cases, the cover level is fixed at an amount roughly defaulting onto the portals of 25,000, but that can increase up to 50,000 depending on which of the insurers that you choose. Now, those of you who on the call who understand clearly critical illness plans will know that when an adult makes a full payment claim on their critical illness plan, and that includes children's cover, the children's cover will stop at the same time as the adult critical illness cover stops if a full payment claim is made. If an additional payment claim is made, then the cover continues like the adult cover, and it's defaulted to the adult criteria. And that again depends whether it's level or decreasing. And as many of you will know, on a level plan, obviously the children's cover is level, but on a decreasing plan, it depends which insurer you go with, whether it remains level or whether it actually decreases in line with the decrease in the mortgage outstanding balance. And these are things that you'll know from the research that you do. So the consideration we now have is the debate about where do I, as an advisor, decide with or agree with my client as to the best place for children's cover to be added should I need it. Now, what the British Friendly guys have done here is that they have introduced a full-blown children's critical illness plan. It's available between £10,000 and £25,000, which is lower than most insurers' levels. But they've also got the ability to add it on to both of their income protection plans. So it's available, and the benefit, of course, of doing that is that once the income protection plan from British Friendly is in place, whether it's Breathing Space or Protect, the children's cover remains in place as long as the premiums are paid within the term of the plan, irrespective of the number of claims that the adult makes on their income protection plan. So you could argue strongly that children's critical illness should really be linked to the adult plans which are going to last the longest, in which case that's a life-only plan or an income protection plan. All of the choices that you have available to you now are dependent on your client's needs, budgets, affordability, circumstances, etc. But an important consideration to have is when you're discussing with your clients with children or who are planning to have children in the future, where's the best place to put some or all of their children's cover? Is it on a traditional solution, bolt into a kick plan? Or do I look at an alternative, add children's cover onto an income protection plan with British Friendly on either of their plans? There are other insurers that do something similar, but in this case, British Friendly. Or do I put it on a life-only plan with the insurers that can do it? Or do I do all three, depending on the amount of children's cover and affordability needed? So if we just have a look at the points that Craig mentioned earlier on about the cost of everything. So if we look back to June 2001, when the children's cover first increased to £25,000 from the original £15,000 level, £25,000 today buys a lot less than it did in 2001. So how do we fill the gap that the £25,000 or the £25,000 had in 2001 to what £25,000 needs to buy today? And one consideration that we can all take of this is, do I need more than one lot of children's cover to provide the financial support that the parent needs when the child is ill? Now, Craig mentioned earlier on that you can't claim off an IP plan for your children being ill. You can only claim for the adult being ill. So the impact on the parent of a children's illness can never be understated. And if you think back at some of in your own experiences with your own clients and all the things that you deal with on a daily basis, how much financial support they would need would be dependent on the adult's needs, whether they're married, whether in a relationship, whether they're single parenting or whatever. All of these considerations need to be taken into account when we assess the level of cover that an individual family needs for their child or children, both now and in the future. And over this 38 years or so, 39 years or so since critical illness has been in the market, children's cover has been a core part of that for quite a long period of time. But clearly, as we've now come to the situation where it's evolving and people's needs are changing, people aren't getting married, you have dynamic, fluid families, you have people having second families and things. All of these considerations need to be taken into account when assessing the need and the affordability of children's critical illness cover in the future. So Craig, hopefully that's a bit of a background to cover off some of the questions. And if anyone wants to put some questions in the chat, please feel free to do so, and I'll do my best to answer that as we go through the next part of the session. But hopefully that's given you a bit of a snapshot of where children's critical illness came from, how it's evolved over time, and how it can be used in association with income protection plans like British Friendly have here.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Paul. And as you say, there's been a lot of change over the years, and there's probably a lot more that can happen and should happen as the future progresses. You know, that you rightly mentioned the limits there of 25,000. What would it buy? And having to create a portfolio in some respects of children's critical illness cover to try and cover off what that gap would be. And you would hope that over time, you know, insurers such as ourselves will review the levels of cover that we have and try and make changes to help, you know, customers, members as time goes on. So we'll move on now to the next question. If my slides ever work. Oh, there you go. So this one is an interesting one because Paul can wax lyrical about this for quite some time. So we've mentioned children's critical illness, and I've said it quite a lot, and our plan is called children's critical illness. And Paul mentioned there in his previous answer to the question a lot about children's critical illness. But in your opinion, Paul, is the name children's critical illness still relevant today?
Great. Well, Craig, you over the years I've known you for so long, this is one of the best questions I think you've ever asked me, because if I was to, I'm going to give you 6 names of individuals, and they're sports people, and you'll recognise them. I hope I pronounce them correctly. I've got 2 football players, 2 cricket players, and 2 rugby players. So I've got Michel Aguiman, Miles Lewis Skelly, Davina Perrin, Jacob Bethel, Lily Compton, and Henry Pollock. So Michelle and Miles are professional football players, Davina and Jacob are professional cricket players, and Lily and Henry are professional rugby players. What do they all have in common is my question. And if anyone fancies putting the answer in the chat, I'll give you 20 seconds or so just to have a guess about what those 6 individuals all have, and that kind of leads into the answer to Craig's question. So if anybody fancies a stab at that one, that'll be fantastic. If not, I'll give you the answer in about 15 seconds. Just have a quick pause. Poorly children? Nope, not well. They may well. They definitely don't think they're poorly because they're all professional sport at the moment. Well, the answer, no, they do have a risk of being injured, Kieran, certainly do, but that's not the answer. Kim, no, that's a good question too, and I don't know the answer to that one, but that's not the answer to this. So the answer to that question is those 6 individuals. The answer to that question is those 6 individuals would still be eligible for children's cover on a British Friendly's plan, irrespective of the fact that they are all elite sportsmen and all adults in their own right. So they're all under 20 when I looked it up last night. And so each of those individuals, even though they are full professional sportsmen, some of them will be earning quite a lot of money, they would still be eligible to be covered under British Friendly's children's critical illness plan. So the question Craig asked is children's critical illness, the name of it, still relevant today? Well, I think you probably could agree that when you look at those 6 individuals, and there were hundreds of professional sportsmen and people doing all sorts of things, they would still be covered by their parents' adult critical illness plan if they had one. So do we need to consider adapting the name, perhaps not from an insurer's perspective, but perhaps in the conversations that you have with your clients, to have something like children, young person and or young adult and dependents cover, or something like that, to say that it's actually not just children anymore? Because I've got a 22-year-old at home, and if I was to call her a child, I'd probably get a strong telling off that she's no longer a child. And I'm sure you have these conversations yourself. So the important thing is perhaps change the emphasis of how we approach the language that we used. And some of you on the call may be familiar with CIExpert's critical thinking report from Yes, They Are Always Children. I've got 3 children. Yes, they always are children, respective of their age. But in terms of the conversations you have with the relevance of the cover, they go through stages. So they are children, they go into young adults, dependents, and all the way through. So are we looking at the right terminology that we use? So whether an insurer calls it children's critical illness or not is up to them. But during the conversations that you have with your clients, they are your clients' children, but they provide cover while they're children, while they're young adults, and while they're dependent. So how do we adapt the language that we use? And if we go back to the critical thinking report of 2024, one of the key misconceptions that it found within it was whether children were actually covered as part of that. Now, if we have a look at the design of a children's critical illness plan, you have congenital conditions, you have child-specific conditions, and you have the children's version of the adult conditions that are covered under the plan. And just quickly checking on our insight zone on the British Friendly's child-specific conditions, and to have a look at that. They currently have 8 congenital conditions under their current plan: cerebral palsy, cystic fibrosis, Downs, Edwards syndrome, hydrocephalus, muscular dystrophy, Patau syndrome, and spina bifida. They're all children-specific conditions that apply to children from birth, and they're picked up really quickly. So it's important that when we have a look at the conditions, the discussions that you make, and what we try to do within CIExpert and those who are familiar with us, is that in our insight zones, British Friendly have one, we have a children's critical illness section, and within there you can look at a signed off version of British Friendly's children's critical illness plan that goes specifically into the children's conditions covered within them. Now, they apply to children, they apply to young adults up to 23, and they apply to dependents too. So the nature of modern day families is that your children may be shared with a future partner, or you may have children with different people and different individuals and different partners moving forward. And it's how do we have that conversation and the terminology and the language that we use to get across what we're actually recommending that your clients consider to take out, and how it fits within the relationship they have with their children, young adults or dependents within their family unit. So the answer to your question, Craig, is you probably do need to come up with a different approach to what we call it. As advisors on the call today, what you call it is what your clients will need to understand that you're trying to recommend to them, and it's just about to get that language right, and in particular to be able to separate the balance between the child-specific conditions, the congenital conditions of pre-birth, and then the conditions and how they apply to children, adults and dependents as they get older up to 23.
That's great, Paul. And to your point, I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and if I called her a child, I would probably get a severe telling off as well, and that she's nowhere near 22 yet. That's great. Thanks very much, Paul. So next question. So my client already has an adults policy that includes children's cover. Is it worth me mentioning this additional cover with an IP policy? Now, I think we covered this a little bit earlier, Paul, but it might be just worth going into a little bit more detail.
I think, Craig, this is another one of your great questions, because if you think that many of you out there on the call today will have clients with existing critical illness plans with children's cover in, probably at a cover level of £25,000, but that could go as high as 50, depending on which insurer that you've got. Now, there are a couple of things to consider here. If your client in your regular reviews and your conversations wants some more children's critical illness cover, generally they're going to have to take out a new adult critical illness plan to do that, simply because it's linked. But then it's also linked, generally, not all the time, but in most cases, the children's cover is linked to the level of the adult's cover, and there are some conditions in there, and that also depends on whether, one, the adult can afford more cover, two, whether they can have it from an underwriting perspective, where their health may have changed, all sorts of things, and three, whether it's actually the best thing for them to do. So the alternative here is that if your client doesn't have an income protection plan and they're looking to have one, it's the opportunity to build in a flexible amount of children's cover that the client can afford. Now, not every insurer can go down to £10,000. Most of them default to 25,000. Some can go down, but not very many. And they're only two that can go down below 25,000. And there is only one of those which you can put onto an IP plan. So it's really interesting balance about how you produce that cover. Now, the need for income protection, as we know, is massive. It's growing, but not everybody can have it. So it's a balance between the two. And if you're looking at, in particular, the type of client that you would have that would qualify for a breathing space plan for British Friendly, for example, might be more manual. The job occupation might be a little bit more problematic from an underwriting perspective. It also allows those clients to put children's cover onto the breathing space plan that they may not be able to have a critical illness plan themselves for, or only have one insurer out there where you can put life cover onto a kick plan, and one insurer out there where you can put children's cover onto a kick adult life plan, and there's one insurer out there where you can put children's cover onto an adult sick plan, or a sick plan onto an adult life only plan, and you'll know who those are. So the concept we're trying to look at here is a portfolio approach to protection, where you're finding the best, most comprehensive adult critical illness plan for each of the adults involved, and then we're looking to create a portfolio of children, young person dependents cover from a range of different insurers, which may also help enhance the health and well-being packages that are available to support. It's not just the children's cover you're buying when you buy children's cover or recommend children's cover. It's the support service that sit around them. And how do you create that support mechanism that will support the family, children, etc., when you need to, when one of the children is ill, or one or more of the children is ill? And it might be that by creating a portfolio of different insurers, that also broadens out the scope of the support services from the various insurers that are offered via their health and wellbeing packages that give greater comfort and support to the adults who are looking after their children at the time of illness. And really, it's a slightly different approach. And many of you be thinking, well, that's really hard to do. I've got to do lots and lots of different things, and I've got lots of different application forms, I've got lots of this, and I've got lots of this, and I've got lots of this. The answer is that technology is catching up with all of those challenges, and the portals and research platforms such as ourselves are doing our best to help you, provide you with information that you need to build a portfolio up. And we've worked closely with British Friendly for a long time, and we were involved with them when they were helping to design this 2 or 3 years ago. And the most that we can do to support them and all the insurers looking is within the insight zones to help you get the broader understanding of what's available from each of the different insurers, how the British Friendlies Protect and breathing space plans fit into the overall package that you're trying to create. And while you're building this portfolio of peripheral services that sit around, and I don't mean peripheral in a negative sense, but I mean it in an all-encompassing sense, that you're creating a holistic package of support for not just the adult involved here, but for all of the people within the family unit who are impacted on by an illness to a child within that family. And it's an approach which we're seeing more of. It's an approach which the portals can support with their multi-policy quotes that you can put together these portfolios, whether it's on Iris, whether it's on Solution Builder, whether it's on Underwrite Me, whether it's on Synaptics, or whether it's on Novium. You can put together all of these different scenarios, and you can create a budget quality led portfolio protection products to pull together the relationship between value and affordability and need and cost and outcome. And all of those can be done to support. So whereas 5 years or so ago, what we're suggesting might have been considered quite a lot of work, and it is quite a lot of work. And it's quite a lot of work because you're doing a fantastic job by pulling all this together. Your clients are getting a better outcome. It takes a bit longer, but the outcome and the cover that you're providing for your clients is so significantly higher as a result of it, that every time you add an extra layer, you're providing an extra layer of comfort, an extra layer of support, and an extra layer of advice and recommendation that you've been making that helps your clients and their dependent families when they need it the most. So what we're looking at is, I think, believe is that by having broader conversations with your clients, with the flexibility that products, children, young person dependence cover from the likes of British Friendly can offer you as part of that discussion with your clients, is to go back and have a chat with them just to make sure that they're comfortable with everything, but not to leave it too late. And if you're dealing with young clients and people who are planning to have children in the future, let's get your cover in place before they actually start on that journey. So it would be tragic if somebody would buy critical illness and wait that just a little bit too long, and where the solution could have been put in place earlier. So have these conversations early in the relationship you have with your clients as you can. Don't be worried about introducing the idea of having future children for those that don't have it, and so they have the comfort to know that when they become pregnant as a couple and they move forward and have children, that they do have the cover in place.
Great, thanks, Paul. I think we've pretty much covered this one off. So I've got a question, and we talked about the flexibility of adding it to an IP policy and what it can give, i.e., if the adult CI plan goes into claim, children's CI is lost, and obviously the IP policy is very much different as long as the premiums are being paid. If that IP policy goes into claim and then unfortunately the child becomes very poorly and very sick and is diagnosed with one of the conditions, whereas the CI plan, that would be gone. This would obviously now, you still be able to claim for that child. I think also the fact of it being sort of with IP, if you had a joint benefit, joint critical illness benefit, for instance, my belief in that, Paul, would be there's still only one critical illness payment for a child that will come out of it. I think I'm correct in that assumption, aren't I? Whereas with income protection not being a joint benefit and being individual, you've got the option of both parents being able to take out the cover. If they've both got income protection plans, they could both take out children's critical illness, and therefore that 25,000 all of a sudden becomes 50,000, which gives a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more cover that they could need. So my question, rather than this one, because I think we've covered this already, how do you see the future of children's critical illness? What do you see next, or what, in your opinion, should be next to evolve children's critical illness, adult cover, young person's cover, sorry, a little bit further?
When we did critical thinking, one of the things we identified was the inherent need for individuals to have their own adult critical illness plans and not to share them with a partner. We called it single is best. Yeah. And within an IP plan, you can't have a joint IP plan. So you have to have children's cover, in your case, linked to it. So you're absolutely correct. If you've got a couple and it doesn't matter whether they're married or not and circumstances, and one of them has an income protection plan with you and one of them doesn't, that children's cover is up to a maximum of 25,000. If they both had their own, that's 50,000, up to 50,000 straight away. Now, because of that, the conversations that everyone on this call can now have is that if you've got clients that have a joint life first event critical illness plan with children's cover in, and they have children, or they're planning to have children in the moment, in the future. Now, children aren't the reason why an adult takes out a critical illness plan or an income protection plan. The reason they take it out is because they have a specific need requirement, whether that's linked to a loan, a mortgage, or an income, or whatever it might be, or maybe they're renting, it doesn't, so it's not linked to a mortgage at all, that they need, or you've recommended, or they certainly need an amount of money if something catastrophic happens to them. Now, the same applies to the children. Now, but the children are not the beneficiaries of the policy in the same way as an adult is a beneficiary of an adult critical illness plan. The purpose of children's cover is to provide their parents, carers, with an amount of money that allow them to look after them while they're ill. What that amount of money is a judgment call on the impact of that family of an illness to a child. And that clearly, that's dependent on what the income to the adult family is. Now, the average income in 2024 in the United Kingdom was £34,750 per person. So £25,000 worth of child critical illness is equivalent to 2/3 of 1 year's gross income for a employed, or for an employed person. So for a child to become ill, for them perhaps to need the adaptations that you've made to your house earlier on, Craig, when you mentioned the support that particular family got from a well-known television program, but not everybody can have that. And if you think that you might need a disability converted built vehicle, you might need to change the layout of your house, you might need to travel to hospital every single day for an extended period of time, and you might have to do that and take time off work and ask for leave and do all sorts of things. But if you're self-employed, then you're not earning at the same, or your clients aren't earning at the same time as they're doing all of this, because clearly their children will come first. So the purpose of children's cover is to look after both, to support the child or the parent of the child while the child is recovering, but also to replace the income of the adult. So within the, let's take a breathing space plan, Craig, to start with. So you've got a self-employed tradesman who is not able to work because one of their children has become ill to claim off a critical illness plan. He's got no way of generating future income while he's looking after, he or she or they are looking after their child or children. So the purpose of the children's cover is to provide an amount of support for that parent or parents to care for their children when they need it most. So that's what we're doing for here. But the plan that it goes on is really very important, because as we said earlier on, if you leave it on an adult kick plan and you make a full payment plan, like you're most likely to do, that plan's going to stop. So here, adding it to an IP plan means that providing the premiums are paid and providing it doesn't come to the end of its term, or providing the policyholder hasn't died, that children's cover will remain in place until either of those three events happen, or the child gets too old to claim off it. So you are by default providing a depth of cover that you might not otherwise been able to do. And of course, the other thing to consider, and I mentioned earlier on, is that many decreasing adult critical illness plans, particularly the core plans, the ones with the 2 additional payments in, their children and young person and dependents cover reduces in line with the adult outstanding cover amount. And if you think that there's normally a percentage element to the children's cover, if you look at it linked to a decreasing term plan, which will be the current cover level, or 25% or 50% of that, whichever's the lower. So as you go through a decreasing term plan linked to a decreasing mortgage with children's cover, then the children's cover is reducing. It starts off at a lower point because it's going to start off at whatever the figure is, or 50% of the cover level. And it's always going to be 50% of the cover level at the time of claim as it decreases through the adult policy of the 25 years or 30 years of the term. And so those of you on the call today, it might be worth looking back at all your existing decreasing term plans, particularly if they're joint, having a look at the children's critical illness if it's still applicable to them, and looking at what the children's cover amount is probably worth today as it's decreased in line with its adult cover level. And you can't change that. You can't go back to your insurer and say, look, I want to put my children's cover back up to the amount, or my client's children's cover back up to the amount it was when they took the plan out 17 years ago. So you can't do that. The only way you can do that is to increase the children's cover needed for that family, is to take out a new plan that's not linked to the decreasing element of a mortgage protection plan. And that will either be an IP plan if they can have one, a life only plan if they can't. And there's only one insurer out there that allows you to bolt on a full-blown children's critical illness plan to a life only plan. And there is one insurer out there that allows you to bolt on children's serious illness cover to its life only plan too. So those are the only choices that you've got. So if you do have clients that only have a DTA plan on a joint life first event basis, not second event basis, but a joint life first event basis with critical illness in, it might be worth having a look at those, because one, you've got decreasing children's critical illness, and two, you've only got one lot of it. If each individual on that joint policy had their own plan, they'd have two lots of children's critical illness, probably with two different insurers. And that would give so much more value, so much more flexibility, so much more cover, and ultimately provide the parents of the children, young persons and dependents, the cover that they need should anything happen to their children that they might not necessarily have at the moment, but they might think they have, because when they took out the plan, they might not have been aware that on a decreasing term plan linked to a mortgage, a joint life first event, or a single life plan, for that may be, the children's cover reduces in line. All of the core plans out there and some of the enhanced plans out there, their children's cover will reduce in line with the adult cover.
That's great, Paul. Thank you very much. We've kind of come to the end of the questions now. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick whistle-stop tour, because we haven't got long left, I appreciate, in the meeting time. Give you a quick whistle-stop tour of the British Friendly proposition. Now, I've got a team of BDMs that are more than happy to wax lyrical and talk you through the full contract and how it works on separate meetings. So should anybody wish to have the sight of the full presentation and one of my BDMs to talk to them about it and see where it fits within your business, then please get in touch, and we'll certainly arrange that for you. So we kind of have it in our mind that clients shouldn't pay for cover that they don't need. So when you've got an adult CI plan, and Paul's mentioned this quite a number of times now, and generally these children's CI policies are built into these plans. Regardless of whether you need it or not, regardless of whether you've got children or qualifying children for this policy, you're paying for it. It's built into the price of the overall plan. Whereas we decided by adding it as an add-on or a bolt-on that we give people choice. So it's only the people that need it or opt to add it to their policy that will be paying for it. Now, our children's critical illness cover comes with a choice of benefit ranges, so you can choose anywhere from £1,000 to £25,000 worth of cover in £1,000 increments. And if you were selecting the £25,000 worth of cover, that would cost an additional £3.50 per month for 25,000. Now, as I said before, if you have, I think the term they use now is blended families, Paul, I believe. So
Fluid,
if you had blended families now where you may have, you know, people that have remarried, divorced, whatever it may be, if, you know, everybody, if they are responsible for that child, financially responsible for that child, they could have cover to cover that child. So if you had a husband and wife, wife and wife who had remarried and they took out cover, both of them, that would be 50,000. If the other part of the blended family decided also to take out cover for that, covering that particular child, because they're all responsible for them in a blended family situation, that obviously could go up to £100,000 quite quickly. So it depends on how you build these up and the conversations that I had with your clients. We cover a total of 78 critical illnesses. So that would be 58 full conditions, which including congenital conditions and 8 child-specific conditions. Plus we have 20 additional payment conditions. So these are if a child was to contract a less serious condition that would pay out, that could pay out up to half of the amount that they had. So if they had the full 25,000, it would be 12,500. Now, what does happen then is, because it's an additional payment, it doesn't reduce the original £25,000 worth of cover down. So therefore, if that one child, after the payout of the 12,500, contracted a full critical illness that was covered under the 78, then that 25,000 would also pay out, making that all of a sudden £37,500 worth of cover for £3.50. And I think if I remember rightly, the last time I bought a Costa coffee, if you buy one of these pumpkin spice lattes, it's probably going to cost you more than £3.50.
Right, just on that £3.50, that applies to irrespective of the number of the children on the plan, doesn't
Absolutely,
it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're coming on to that in a second. And effectively, that's if you have, you know, if I think there's a program on television in the 25 kids and counting, you know, if irrespective of how many children are in the household, that covers every single one. So the only time it would stop would be as if we paid out a full payment for that one of the child. So that child would no longer be able to claim under the full critical illness aspects of it. However, the remaining children in the household would still remain covered. And it's not per child. It's not £3.50 per child. It just covers the whole family unit. So dependent on how many children there are, that's them covered. Who's covered? So like I said, all of your children are covered. And that would be from birth up until they're either 18 or 23 if they're in full-time education. We include biological stepchildren, legally adopted children, and children the member has granted parental responsibility or legal guardianship for. And like I said before, should one child claim on the policy, other children will still be covered for the benefit amount. The cover again fits around your family, so it can be added to your application during pregnancy or 6 months of birth, or adoption, or becoming a step parent or legal guardian and responsibility. So it's very flexible in that respect. So if you had a client that you did an IP policy for 2 weeks ago and they have children or they're planning on children, you could go back to them and you could try and add that. You could add that to the cover and it would be simple to do. And if it's gone in the future and you no longer require it, it can be removed from the policy and you'll stop paying for it. So if your child becomes over the qualifying age, or you feel as though there's no need for it anymore, then again, it can be removed. One thing to note is you can't add it back in once you've removed it. So if you decided to take it off from a cost-based perspective, you can't then go and try and add that back in at a future date.
Craig, one of the questions from me is that what amount of income protection does the adult need to have to be able to bolt on the children's cover to it?
There isn't an amount. It's just the minimum, whatever the minimums are. So if you had a policy that was at the minimum payment, so I think it's £5 a month or whatever it would be, you know, you can add the full 25,000 in. It's not underwritten in any way, shape or form, and it's not attached although it is attached to the plan, it's not linked to the adult in question. So it's nothing to do with the adult in question. So we don't underwrite it. It's not based on their cover. It's not based on any circumstances that they're in, their occupation, their health, nothing. It's purely for the child. And like I say, we don't underwrite it in any way, shape or form. And as we said, so we try and be a bit fairer. So a diagnosis is hard enough. So what we don't require is a survival period after diagnosis. And as I said, there's no limit to the number of children that can be covered. So, I mean, it's all encompassing. Like I said, there's a lot more detail about it. And what I didn't want to do was take up too much time on this. I was more interested in Paul's thoughts on the market and it in itself.
But Craig, it's a really important point to make, I think, because when people are looking for IP, first of all, you obviously have to qualify for IP to have it, and not everybody's does. And not everybody can. When people talk about IP, they always seem to talk about the maximum benefit available for their income, and of course, you know, with IP, you are limited by legislation and limits. With KIC, you're not. You're limited by affordability and there are clearly upper limits, but there's no direct correlation between someone's income and the amount of adult IP benefit or KIC benefit they can have. So with this, having a choice between 1,000 and 25,000 that can be selected, and you have to have yours at outset, don't you? You can't add it on during
no,
the,
you can add it on.
Add it back on, can you?
Oh, you can't add it back on. If you take it off, you can't add it back on. Yeah.
So you can add it on in the future. So you take out an affordable IP plan with you. You take out your breathing space or you protect. You're not planning to have children at the moment, and then all of a sudden you decide, well, I'm going to have children in the future. You go back to the advisor. You on this call, or the advisor establishes as part of your annual review that your client's going to have a child or planning to have children in the future. They've got an IP plan with British Friendly. You add the children's cover on for the amount they can afford, up to £3.50. See, I just can't believe how little money that is for the amount of cover that so many people could possibly benefit, particularly if a couple had one each.
Exactly.
So £7 and £50,000 worth, up to £50,000 for a full payment child claim. You know, that's tremendous. Benefits.
I think it works out 13 pence for every 1,000.
I think it is 13 pence 1,000. Yeah.
You can't even buy a Freddo for that anymore.
I don't even buy anything for 13 pence, Craig.
No. And you know, I think it's important. So, like I say, I've got a full team of BDMs who are more than capable and more than willing to have more detailed meetings around the actual plan itself and how we could help you in the future. The last thing I'm going to touch on, and I think Paul mentioned this earlier before, is that when you become a member with British Friendly, you also get access to free discretional member benefits as well. So, and you know, you've got unlimited GP appointments. So your client can book a GP appointment, and your child under the age of 23 could have a GP appointment should you need them. There's help and support with mental health sessions, and that could also be available for children within certain circumstances. And we also, importantly, there's a second medical opinion service there. So obviously, when a diagnosis can be very confusing and very upsetting, you know, and you've just been told your child contracted a particular condition, there is the option, if you have an income protection policy with British Friendly, and you don't need a CI one to actually have that. To be fair, you could seek a second medical opinion on it as well from us. So there are lots of other things, and these are free. And as soon as you become a member or you buy an income protection policy with British Friendly, you automatically get access to these.
So Craig, in there, it's interesting, isn't it, that you asked me a question earlier on about what do we call children's cover, and it's your client's children. But in modern families, they might not be the client's children. They might be dependents of the policyholder, but they might actually not be their biological children. So
exactly.
The language is so important to the discussions that we're having, and the ability to have a support service that is worth a tremendous amount of money at no additional cost on top
Yep.
of the children's cover, albeit non-contractual.
Yeah.
But,
Oh yes, yeah, there is that.
But to have that support and to have that second medical opinion service that they might not otherwise have access to. And we talk a lot about GP 24/7s being unlimited 24/7 365 being the important thing here, and they are, particularly for young children. But second medical opinions for the more serious conditions, they can't be underestimated either.
No.
And if you look at if you had a minimum premium British friendly breathing space for £5 a month, I think it is off the top of my head, you add in any amount of children and young person dependence cover from £1,000, your clients would get the mutual benefits program that British friendly offer on that level of premium. Now, whether that's something that this was designed to do is another question. But the reality of today is that's what you can recommend to your clients and they can benefit from when they need to. They could also, like I said a bit earlier, or suggested a bit earlier, have this broader support service that you create around. They're not designed as the primary reason why people buy a protection plan.
No.
But they are an important additional feature which sit behind them that are designed to help families when they need it most.
No, fully agree, Paul. Right, so that's it from us today. I'm not sure. I mean, we've gone over time, which I had a feeling might happen, if I'm openly honest. However, if anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask now, or if you want to put them in the chat, I can pick them up after the meeting. I can get some responses over to you. Additionally, obviously, as I also said, if anybody would like to hear more about the children's critical illness policy and how we can attach it to an IP policy and the benefits of doing so, then please, I'd urge you to get in touch, and I'll get one of my BDMs to be in touch, and they can run through the proposition in greater detail than I've done today. But if there's nothing else from anybody, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Paul. As always, your thoughts and insight on, it can be quite an emotive sort of subject when you think about children being poorly and when you think about people's experiences of this. So it's good to get your thoughts on it and sort of how the market's evolved over the years and how doing it in a different way and building a holistic sort of solutions can be better now that we've got these changes that have occurred over the years. So I'd like to extend my thanks on behalf of British Friendly and everybody that's attended today, Paul, for your thoughts.
Well, Craig, that's very kind, and all we can hope by having discussions like this is with everybody on the call is that we take away something that we can use practically the next time we speak to someone, and if that results in you recommending a policy that you wouldn't otherwise have recommended, and unfortunately the children have to, or the adults or the children have to make a claim from it, and they have some sort of financial support that they wouldn't otherwise have had, then the hour that you've spent with Craig and I this morning has been worthwhile, and that's why we do these things. So thanks very much to British Friendly for inviting me along, and hope everyone's had a good time.
Amazing. Thank you very much, everybody. Paul, I'll catch up with you soon, and
Okay,
I'll go through the questions, and if there's anything where people are noted, I'll also more than likely get the download of the attendee list. So if anybody wants to be in touch, then obviously I'll get in touch with you.
Right, just before we go quickly, Barbara Stanley had a question you might need to check back on through the questions about the first 6 months of. It's gone off my list of questions, but I didn't pick it up quick enough to get back to her.
I'll have a look. And I'll go through it.
All right, fabulous. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.